The following program is being brought to you on the VoiceAmerica Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive with Dr. Rebecca Risk. Do you ever feel that even though nothing seems seriously wrong and you pass all the medical tests, that you still feel that your health, pain, and fatigue are completely out of control? It doesn't have to be that way. Listen to the tips and suggestions given on our program today and take back control of your health. Now, here is Dr. Rebecca Risk.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Joining me today is Dr. Stan Tatkin. He is a couples therapist known for his pioneering work in helping partners form happy, secure, and long-lasting relationships. Today, we are discussing his books, Wired for Dating and Wired for Love. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad you can join us today. How did you get started and interested in helping couples?
Well, I spent many years working with something called personality disorders, people who have a long history of interpersonal problems, and that led me to do some prevention work with mother-infant pairs, actually based on the Hinks Institute, which is up in Toronto, the Watch, Wait, and Wonder program. I don't know if your audience or anybody knows about the Muirs, but they impressed me many years ago. Their work with little children, and so I wanted to do prevention of disorders. That actually led me to working with adult romantic pairs for a couple of reasons. One, it was John Gottman's publications of his psychobiological work, and two, I went through a divorce. And that was maybe the worst time in my life. And so I devoted all my energy into understanding what happened in my own marriage and applied everything I knew to infant attachment, infant brain development, to adult pair bonding. And here I am now.
Well, it seems like you're doing some good work. Your books, both of them are very informative, but also really easy to read, which isn't always the case. You know, you can go through them in an easy amount of time and do the work, because there's a lot of questions, and they're like workbooks in there, yeah, which I think is really helpful as well. In your books, one of the main things that you talk about is the attachment styles. And I think before we get into the nitty-gritty of the rest of the books, we should, maybe you can explain what those are for us.
Well, attachment, basically, the styles laid out in the book are based on research models in attachment, infant attachment, and adult attachment. And what it means, it's not personality. People should know that we're not talking about personality. We're talking about adaptation to environment, the environment we're born into. And if the culture that we're born into, the family culture, emphasizes the relationships, if relationships come first, generally speaking, those relationships are deemed secure. And so that's a very general way of putting it. To the degree that the relationships don't come first in families of origin, the child is insecure, or at least the children brought up in that environment will be less than secure, because relationships are not the central feature, not the central value. So, for instance, in some families, performance, appearance comes first, right? Self-esteem is the prevailing good in the family. And the family organizes itself around those themes. And therefore, the relationship falls behind in terms of importance, and a child is expected to be smart, be very good at sports, be attractive, make the family look good, and so on. On the other side of the spectrum, there are certain family cultures where the child is encouraged to stay dependent and to take care of at least one of the parents' emotional state. And that also creates a problem, too, where the relationship is not central, but the child's, the importance of the child having to take care of one of the parents becomes the all-important thing. And in both cases of insecure attachment, the family systems are too unfair, too unjust, and too insensitive too much of the time, and that's carried forward into adult relationships.
Okay, and these are called the anchor, the island, and the wave in your books.
Right, the anchor, island,
yeah.
and the wave. So the anchor would be considered someone who is basically secure in their relationship starting from very young, or at least gained that way, gained a secure attachment through reparative relationships. Or a wave, we would say it belongs to a group that clings. That's the person I talked about that has to take care of at least one person's emotional state. And then the distancing group, which includes the island, is that culture where performance and self-esteem comes first. The child had to manage at least one parent's self-esteem throughout childhood. And so you have people who are afraid of having their independence stolen and versus people who are afraid of being abandoned and left.
Okay. Now, in preparation for the show, you actually have, I think it's in the Wired for Dating book questionnaire about how to figure out, where you are and where your prospective partner is according to how they were raised and what happened in their childhood. And I had a few people do this with me just so that we could, understand it.
Okay.
And a lot of time it made sense. But I guess one question that came up is a lot of time the upbringing isn't as clear cut as what you've explained, and one parent's one way, so you could have a parent who's an anchor and a parent who's an island or a wave, and so one person actually balanced on two of the attachment styles. So what does that mean for when they come into a relationship?
Well, people should understand that these are based on research models that look at aggregates of people. So there is no accurate way of pigeonholing a person here. The only thing that this does is to help people understand how they become when they're dependent on another person. So I start to get into a relationship with you, and as I commit to you, I will start to remember experiences I've had when depending on another person. Now, if those experiences were of the kind where I was afraid of losing my independence or losing myself or losing my stuff, that falls in line with island culture. And the reason it would be important for me to know this is so that I can take responsibility for my distancing behaviors when I get into a relationship with you. And I can understand what scares me and not simply distance automatically without repair. In other words, it gives me more information about how I will likely behave in a relationship where I'm dependent. Now, most people are ishy, like islandish, wave-ish. So people have to keep that in mind, that these are behaviors that are in line with experiences from early childhood. There are some people who are hard and fast this way, and that's usually the primary parent, often the mother, right? So let's say the mother is very insecure, either on the clinging side or the distancing side. Even if my father is an anchor, I'm still going to carry some of those insecurities because the primary figure in my life was my mother. That is a theory. That doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate and it's always going to hold true. So people should take this with a grain of salt. The purpose of this is simply to understand the movements of the other person or ourselves when we get into a relationship like this. How do we move toward that person and how do we move away from them? It's really simply about that. It's not about pathology. It's not about good or bad. It's simply nature. It's simply how we remember the experience of dependency.
Okay. So when we're, you're saying we can do some repair on these, but how do these attachment styles come together and relate to each other?
Well, they all relate to each other. There is no, people would think, well, islands and islands would get together, and they often do, actually, or that the wave and the island couldn't possibly do it, but they often do. And you think of it as, can cats and dogs get along together? They certainly can. And so it isn't really a problem unless people don't understand themselves, they don't understand the person they're with, they don't speak that language, they don't understand that their brain actually operates a little bit differently, they see the world a little differently. So a lot of this is just, learning to understand others. Now, if somebody is highly insecure and they don't know they are, or if they are not interested in something we call secure functioning relationships, that person may not be the ideal partner, not because they're an island or a wave, but because they don't really care at this point to form a secure functioning relationship with another person. And what that means is that despite my background, you and I decide to have each other's backs, be in the foxhole together, to protect each other in public and private. In other words, we form a two-person system of protection where we provide cover for each other and protect each other from the hostile environment and from predators. This is a very basic biological need for all mammals. So here we're talking about a higher purpose, a higher need for survival. We put aside our styles and we override them by a greater good, which is, we're in this together, we better survive together, therefore it's in our best interest to be in each other's care. Okay.
So I want to talk first about, I think, a progression of relationships. Of course, first we have dating. So, the attachment styles are in both of your books. But when we're dating, there's certain things that you also go through, that there's some myths about dating that you felt should be dispelled. Can you just tell us what some of those are?
Well, we have holdovers from previous generations, like the me generation, but ideas like you have to love yourself before you can love another person, which developmentally is hogwash. We are always loved first. We are regulated first from the outside in. We don't do anything very well except learning from the outside in first, and then we start to do it ourselves. So we learn to love ourselves by loving another well and by being loved. Or the other myth is you've got to know yourself before you can know another person, which is not true, or before you can be in a relationship. This is all done in tandem. I learn to know who I am in relationship with you, and by knowing you very well, I begin to know myself as well. So we have these ideas out there that are contrary to the human condition, to the way we're wired, and it's getting people off track and thinking that they have to wait a long time or go into therapy in order to be in a love relationship, and that's just not true. This is done by doing it and failing and then doing it again and hopefully learning to do it better and better.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting when you say that. I know in your book you talk about, a baby learns to love because its parents love it. And, that myth about you have to love yourself, I think a lot of people wouldn't end up in a relationship, and we wouldn't end up being challenged in ways that we need to be if we're just on our own all the time.
That's right. I think there was another one in the book, soulmates. This idea of soulmates. Now, if you and I, were together and we formed a secure functioning relationship, one that's based on, fairness, justice, and sensitivity, mutuality, I could say you're my soulmate because I've already found you. But at a full stop, looking in the dating world for my soulmate is silly, because a lot of people think there's only one soulmate out there, or maybe there's a couple. That would be impossible odds. The person who is our soulmate is the person that we decide hopefully, decide to enter into these set of agreements with, that we're going to be in each other's care. We're going to take each other on as burdens because we can, and because the alternative is not very good. So these are decisions that people make, adult decisions, because based on, again, survival, based on also being able to thrive in this world. So pair bonding is essential, not simply to have offspring, but to protect each other, to deal with existential fears together, to help us calm each other at night when life becomes scary. It serves a very real practical purpose.
Okay. What's the fog of infatuation?
Oh, the fog of infatuation? Well,
I think we all really know what that is, but
yeah.
You can tell us a little bit.
Well, when we meet somebody, we're on drugs. That's just the way it is. We're on drugs. Nature puts us on a very fancy cocktail, a mixture of dopamine and testosterone and oxytocin and vasopressin, all sorts of neurochemicals and hormones that allow us to be alert and interested in the person. It's part of the addictive system, actually, that gets activated that we call now exciting love. And it's the kind of, these are the chemicals that kind of make me want to come back to you again and again, and that make me perseverate or obsess about you when I leave you for the first time. Otherwise, I would just forget you and I would move on. So nature has built in a system here that keeps us infatuated with each other, but we're not exactly good in terms of our judgment. Many of these hormones actually, create a problem with judgment. For instance, alcohol, not that people are going to be drinking alcohol when they meet each other, but alcohol will change your perception in terms of the other person's symmetry or asymmetry in the face. But just testosterone alone will make you feel terrific with this person, but when that fades away, you may feel differently. You may think differently. So it's a good thing to jettison us, to get us, into a relationship, but it's not going to take us all the way through. It just gets us started.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking today with Stan Tatkin. He's the author of Wired for Dating and Wired for Love. We're going to be back shortly.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Step by step, you made it through the journey of pregnancy. Now your baby is in your arms, and you're on the cusp of a new journey, breastfeeding. As a new parent, you receive a lot of advice, much of it conflicting, some of it outdated. Tune into Born to be Breastfed with host Marie Biancuso to bust through the myths about feeding your baby. Marie and her guests will help you figure out what you can expect and put you on the best and surest path on your breastfeeding journey. Listen every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel.
Have you friended us on Facebook yet? Why not? Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for the keywords Voice America. Once you are part of our Facebook network, you'll receive daily messages about what's happening with our shows, this week's featured guests, and new happenings at the Voice America Talk Radio Network. And you can add your voice to the always active discussions on our timeline. Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for Voice America.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Stan Tatkin. He's the author of Wired for Dating and Wired for Love. So, Stan, in your book, Wired for Dating, you talk about vetting your partner or prospective partner, I suppose. It's somebody that you're dating and you're getting serious about. What does that mean to vet them?
In the old days, if we were back into a tribal civilization, the vetting would be built in because we'd be taking that person who's, let's say, outside of our tribe or outside of our village. That person would have to pass muster within our extended family in our village. So basically, vetting means that we're taking a prospective partner around to our male and female peeps, right? To have them sniff us out as a couple, and if we ask our friends, which we should, both male and female friends that we trust, please tell me honestly, how do we look together? Am I myself when I'm with this person? Do you like this person? Do you like me with this person? This is an important thing to do because, as I said, we're sort of in a fog in the beginning of a relationship, in the beginning of a relationship, and so we need others to check us, to look from a different point of view and give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. This is the way it's been done for ages, but we're not doing that very much these days, and it's a problem. So I will see people sometimes coming to my office, and there was one lady in particular. She was very disheartened to find out after 30 years of marriage her husband had been cheating with everybody. And I asked her, did you take your partner around to your friends, and what did they think of your partner? And she said, all my women friends loved him. And I said, what about your male friends? And she said they did not like him. They thought he was creepy. So there you go. I mean, it's not a for sure thing because people can be wrong anyway. But there is something to be said for taking this person around and having other people give feedback, young and old, male and female, about how they feel about you, because they're fitting into your culture, as you are fitting into their culture, hopefully. And we know that people who don't do this, and they don't vet, or they don't have friends to vet with, are less stable in their relationships going forward than people who do. So I advise that people start to, gear up their social network and use those people to counter what may be a judgment issue when falling in love with another person.
Well, and I think, as you said, in the beginning, we're in that fog of infatuation. We talked about that before the break. And, if you're in that fog and you can't see what's behind it, it's nice to have someone who can see through it.
Yes, it does. It really does.
Yeah. So you have a lot of advice on dating, and actually your book was recommended to me after getting divorced. I've been divorced for 3 years, and I remember the first time I went on a date, it was almost like a practice date because, it had been, 12 years since I had been, out dating anybody, and I think there are a lot of people in this same situation who also don't want to go through, like as you and I both did, a divorce, yes. And they want to find, that do it right, whether right. There's going to be some challenges, but that commitment to be the right one. How would you recommend somebody go through that dating process, getting over the nerves and anything else that can happen when they're going on all these dates to find somebody?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. If you're thinking about that, oh boy, I've got to do this thing which I hate, which is sometimes a humiliating process, other times just plain disappointing. It's like Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the hill and just for it to roll down again. Dating is, for a lot of people, a very depressing proposition. So you can think of it as I'm going out on a date, or you can think of it as I am going to expose myself to various people and learn how to work and understand people and to read them. So in the book we talk about Sherlocking, which is basically another way of vetting somebody. And that is, let's say you and I are going out, I'm going to stay as present as possible, and I'm going to focus all my attention onto you, which helps the jitters because I'm not looking or not thinking about myself so much. I'm spending all of my visual attention on every detail of your face, your eyes, your hair, your hands, what you're wearing, everything. I watch how you're moving. And this attention, this focus, allows me to be less self-conscious, and also allows me to really see you and find you. And let's say I don't end up going out on a second date with you. Well, no harm, no foul, because I can still enjoy meeting a new person and seeing how much I can learn about them in a short amount of time. So if people, think of it in this way, there is no waste of time, not really, because you're practicing your skills on how to read faces, how to read voices, how to read movements, really paying attention. You're becoming better at interaction. You're becoming better at reading people, which, by the way, is one of the ways that we fall in love. The more we pay attention, the more present we are with whatever we're focusing on, the more we tend to enjoy it, actually. So, and the more we look into each other's eyes, the greater the chance that we fall in love, because love is through the eyes. Lust is at a distance, love is up close always. The eyes are extremely important. So if you're thinking of it in that way, you're going out and you are brushing up your skills, or you're learning to be really good at this, at reading people very quickly. It, I think, makes it more fun and more enjoyable and more purposeful.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it. Just enjoying that you're there, whether it's going to turn into something or not.
Yes,
having
and
a
I'm
good
enjoying,
conversation.
we call it Sherlocking. Yeah. And Sherlocking because I am paying attention to every detail. Okay. I can find things out about you without having to ask direct questions. I can be smarter than that. I can be more clever than that. And also the presence of being able to, or focusing my attention on you, is always complimentary. Nobody objects to that. People do object to feeling interrogated. So the purpose of this is to learn about people without interrogating them.
Okay. So how do we go about doing that? How do we also know the attachment style of our partner or the person that we're dating, so that we can relate to them a little better and understand them?
Well, islands have certain behaviors, and again, people have to keep this in mind, that when going out on a first or second date, everyone is nervous. So you can't get an accurate read on people in the very beginning unless they absolutely tell you things that sound like, oh, this is a very strong island. Someone who distances, someone who doesn't depend on anybody, someone who doesn't really look at you and pay attention to you, but seems to be talking about themselves all the time. Maybe doesn't treat the waiter or waitress very well. Maybe describes a lifetime of independence as if that is the greatest thing of all, to be independent. That should raise a flag that you're with possibly with an island, someone who distances, somebody who values their independence and their autonomy and needs to bolster their self-esteem all the time. Or you may be with someone who sounds like they've had trouble in relationships because they cling a lot. They focus on being left or being disappointed or being abandoned. They are hyper-focused perhaps on you and not on themselves. They don't really talk very much about themselves, but they're very interested only in you. There may be signs that this person talks a great deal and needs to talk a great deal. Waves love to talk. That's how they calm themselves down. They love to interact. This is very important to them, but they also have a hard time with separations. And so you might get a read on this person that they have difficulty when separating from you. They may be a wave. So all of this to say, this is not a reason why you wouldn't go out with them again, but now you are better armed to understand possibly how they operate, how they think, and that should allow you to actually learn more about them, not less.
Okay. And so when we're going through this process, how do we know that we've found a good match when it happens?
I've been doing this for so many years, and I can always tell when somebody has met somebody significant. And they talk differently. They can't stop talking about this person, and they talk about them in real ways, not just how handsome or beautiful they are, but what a good heart. This person is a real deal. They're a good person. I watch them. I see how they interact. This person seems to be well filled out. You get a sense of admiration when that person talks about this person, and you get a sense that this is a real contender from the outside. From the inside, the same thing happens. If you find that you can't stop talking about this person, you feel like you've met the greatest thing since sliced turkey. And And those things that you're talking about are real. They're not simply about money or about where this person lives or how great their car is. You're talking about the character of the person, the moral compass of the person, and you seem to have fallen in love with that character, right? I think that's a good sign that you're onto something, and that's a person well worth taking around to your friends.
Okay. You talk a lot about the couple bubble. Can you explain what that is?
Well, the couple bubble is an idea that when a couple gets together, let's say you and I get together, we create a third thing. And that third thing is the relationship. Now, you might think that the relationship is the same with anybody you go out with, but it isn't. Your relationship with me is going to be like a fingerprint that can never be duplicated again. That's because there's a certain kind of mystical phenomenology that goes on between two people that we still can't explain. But it's a mixture of two people, two nervous systems, and we create a unique thing that we want to protect. It's like our ecosystem, our terrariums, the air we breathe, the water we drink. It's our safety and security system, and we protect it at all costs. So that couple bubble means that you and I are at the top of the food chain. We're leaders, we're generals, and we are in charge of each other. We're in each other's care. We move and operate together as a team, and we protect this team at all costs. We never mess with the safety and security system by threatening the relationship. That's a big no-no. We never do that because we understand that that causes havoc day to day in our lives. We instead take fears off the table. We take existential concerns off the table, so we have resources now to spare. The couple bubble is an agreement of protection, of primacy, and we let people in, but we do so by agreement. We just don't let third things or third people in a way that disrupts the harmony of our relationship. So the bubble is protective.
Okay. So how do we go about establishing the bubble?
Well, it's going to take a while because you can't say to somebody in the beginning when you're dating them, hey, are you interested in forming a couple bubble? That would be a turnoff. But I think, and this is very important for your audience, people make lists about their ideal partner, and that is a mistake. People should be making a list of what the ideal relationship should be. And that relationship not only is you, but the other person. So if you want a secure, functioning relationship, you should start to think about what would be good for you and that partner with the question mark, whoever that partner will be. For instance, I believe that the relationship should come first. I believe that we should be fully transparent with each other, not because we have to, but because why not? Why would we do anything other than that? Because not being transparent spends a lot of resources, right? I believe that we should have each other's backs and protect each other in public and private, and so on. So if I meet you and you don't seem to fit into that idea, you don't seem to be interested in transparency, you don't seem to put relationships first, you're not somebody I want to continue seeing, because that would be a deal breaker for me. Again, it's not the person. It's does that person fit into the idea of the ideal relationship? And too many times we skip over that, or we don't even think about it, and we end up going for someone who actually carries with them a number of deal breakers, which we either don't discover or we ignore until way down the line, such as I want children and you never want children. People do this all the time. They get together even though there is a big deal breaker there. So focus on the ideal relationship, not the ideal person. I think that's a safer way of finding somebody who's actually appropriate.
That makes a lot of sense to me. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking today with Dr. Stan Tatkin. He's the author of Wired for Love and Wired for Dating. We're going to be back shortly.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
As we age, our health can decline. For some, it's a slow, even process, while for others, it can happen at a much faster rate. The health decline can start in people as young as their 30s. Did you know a lot of age-related diseases can be prevented, reversed, or eliminated? It's true. You'll find out more every week on Healthy Aging with Dr. Denise Bogard. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 a.m. Pacific Time and 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel. It's your life. Keep it going well.
Have you friended us on Facebook yet? Why not? Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for the keywords Voice America. Once you are part of our Facebook network, you'll receive daily messages about what's happening with our shows, this week's featured guests, and new happenings at the Voice America Talk Radio Network. And you can add your voice to the always active discussions on our timeline. Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for Voice America.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Stan Tatkin. He's the author of Wired for Love and Wired for Dating. So, Stan, before the break, we talked about the couple bubble, and then you did mention something about thirds. What does that mean?
Thirds, well, think of this, that a relationship is a committed romantic relationship, although it doesn't have to be romantic, by the way. There are plenty of secure functioning couples that are not romantic. But it's a situation where we consider it a primary attachment relationship of interdependency. And so, God, I almost forgot what your question was. Could you just repeat the question?
What thirds are for the couple bubble?
What is it? I'm sorry, say that once more.
What is a third in relationship to a couple bubble?
I'm sorry,
yeah.
golly.
That's okay.
So a primary attachment relationship is a dyad, and then but the world exists as triads and more. So there are third people, third things, third activities, third tasks. A mother could be a third, an ex-spouse could be a third, a child could be a third, alcohol or pornography could be a third, anything could be a third. And if it intrudes on the resources of our relationship, let's say you and I are in a primary relationship, then that causes trouble, especially if you or me are relegated to third wheel and we are demoted in some way. That is a sure way to end a relationship. Relationships where people are mismanaging thirds and sidelining their partners or throwing their partners under the bus for another thing or person are doomed. And we know that is going to be a death, a killer in the relationship. And this is one of the reasons why remarriages have such poor statistics. It's not because that there is an increasing number of people to manage, like ex-spouses and stepchildren and so on. It's that people still haven't understood the primacy of the attachment relationship, and that they have to decide who gets in and who doesn't get in. So you and I share and create resources. If somebody tries to compete with those at your cost, somebody has to lose. I have to make sure it's not you. And if it is you, I have to realize that was a mistake, and I have to fix that right away, because it's not supposed to happen. And this, by the way, is true even in polyamorous relationships, and also in polygamous cultures. There's always a primary, and that primary is the person that that gentleman will always run to for comfort or celebration.
Okay, so how can we stop this from becoming an issue?
I think by being aware of it. One of the greatest tragedies that I hear about that starts a relationship and stays a memory for a long, long, long time is when during the wedding or prior to the wedding, one partner doesn't protect the other from a hostile friend or family member. And that's a big mistake. and that person right away feels thrown over for somebody else. People who do this or these kind of experiences have a very long memory and create a lot of trouble, because I think it's sort of built into our DNA. And when we're in a primary attachment relationship, we do not expect to be secondary or third, right? We don't expect to be demoted or thrown to the side. And that creates a big injury and a trust issue, a safety issue for time to come until that's corrected.
Okay. In your book, Wired for Love, you talk a lot about the primitives and ambassadors. Can you explain what those are?
Well, first, I'm a psychobiologist, and that just basically means I study the brain and the body. So here we're talking about the brain, and to make it easy on people, we're just dividing the brain into two areas. The primitives are basically the subcortical areas that are extremely fast and cheap to run. They don't require a lot of oxygen or glucose to run, which means they're extremely efficient, and they basically run our day. Now, the higher cortical areas, the neocortex that we pride in so much, this is a very expensive unit, very expensive components that have to use a lot of oxygen and glucose to run, and they're very slow. And while they're very good at error correcting and regulating our bodies and our brain, they are not going to be operating very well if we are under threat. So as soon as our stress level goes up, and as soon as our threat level goes up, which could be just anything from the way you're looking at me or the way you're talking to me, I don't like it, I feel threatened, I start to go more with my primitives. My primitives start to take over. And the primitive areas are run by memory, something called procedural memory. I'm going to be fully automatic now, and I get into fight or flight. I'm going to be very reflexive, very automatic, and I may not consider the relationship. I may just be considering my survival. So the primitives are interested in survival, not so much in relationship, and we have to watch out for that and be careful to keep each other from going there. So how do you do that? When you and I are in a fight, we are face-to-face, hopefully an eye-to-eye, that's necessary, and we watch each other and we make sure that that we are friendly enough during the fight to make sure that these primitive areas don't think that they're facing down a predator, because it's very easy to happen. So I say to you, I love what you do, and I'm so happy that you're in my life. I appreciate everything you do for me, but this thing that you did really makes me very angry, and I don't like it. Okay, so I'm respecting the idea that I have to remain friendly to you. Otherwise, if you become threatened by me, you will not hear anything I say. You will get ready to fire back, and that's the way our conversation will go, and that's not very wise. So it's in my best interest to make sure that I'm friendly enough to you to keep that in check and to disarm this area that wants to shoot first and ask questions later. Okay. So, this has a lot to do, it sounds like, with arguing in a relationship, which I think is, one of the major things. If you can't argue well, you're not going to get very far in other aspects of your relationship. So how does this help us in a relationship? Because insecures, their culture is a one-person psychological system, meaning the culture insecures come from are too unfair and too unjust too much of the time. And so people who are insecure tend to be oriented towards themselves only. And when in a struggle for what they want or what they're afraid of, they don't include the other person. They simply take a stand for themselves. And people have to understand that when someone does that, they force the other person to do the same. And now these two people are squared off, and they're going to be now adversaries. That's not a very good situation for getting what you want. The better situation is where I take care of you at the same time I take care of me. I take care of your needs and wants and what you're afraid of. At the same time, I let you know what it is I want or what it is I fear. This then disables your primitives from thinking you're with someone who does not have your interests in mind. You understand? So
Yeah.
if we're both doing that, this is how we create win-win situations. You do not have to worry about me because I'm already telling you I know what I do, and I'm admitting to it, and I understand what you're afraid of or what you want, and I'm going to guarantee you get it. But here's what I want as well. So this is a very basic technique that all good negotiators know, that you don't get anything unless you cater to the need of the person that you are trying to negotiate with. In a love relationship, we bargain. We don't compromise. And the idea that I am going to take a stand for my needs and wants without thinking of you, the idea that I'm going to get anything from that is really very childlike. Nobody does that. And so people have to start thinking in terms of a two-person system, fully mutual, fully collaborative, where we are moving together in time. I have to take care of you simultaneously to taking care of myself. That's how we do it.
Well, it sounds a lot like understanding your partner's attachment style would be helpful with this, because you said you address their fears, so and then you say what you need as well. So you're helping that person, and of course, if you don't know what it is that's triggering them, obviously you're not going to get very far.
Well, another way to put it, I have to be an expert on you, and you have to be an expert on me. I have to be a Rebecca whisperer. Otherwise, what's the point of the relationship? I'm supposed to be your primary. I'm supposed to be very, very good at you, and you're supposed to be very, very good at me, because we are moving together in life and we're protecting each other. But people don't take this seriously. They take each other for granted. Once the novelty wears off, they automate each other. They put each other in procedural memory, and they start to not pay attention or not be present anymore. And this, again, is a problem. So those people who remain present, remain interested, are looking at their partner, listening, and really know their partner inside and out, are actually able to get more and able to move their partner around much more easily without using fear or threat or guilt. And that's what we want.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this brings us into what I was going to ask next. I think it was in your book. You say you want to identify the 3 or 4 things that can make your partner feel bad, and as well as what uplifts them, so you can help them feel good. And it sounds like that's what you're doing when you're fighting, and probably in a normal relationship. I think you can explain that a little better than I can.
Well, if you're in my care, which is what the deal is, then I should know what your kryptonite is, or what you're most afraid of, what would knock you for a loop, what were the 1 or 2 or 3 injuries you incurred during childhood that will be there till the day you die. Now, for me, it's feeling less than, or feeling that the people I want approval from, that I want to be able to sit at the table with, don't want me. That comes from my childhood. Now, I'm 62 years old, so you'd think that I'd mastered that, and I have. But I will still be vulnerable to that even today if the situation comes up. My wife knows me very well. She knows the symptoms of this, and she knows how to minister to me. I know what her fears are. I know what will get her thrown for a loop. For some people, it's not feeling smart. For others, it's not feeling attractive. For others, it's not feeling like they're trusted ever or wanted. There's always something in our past that will knock us for a loop and put us out of commission for a while. That you know what that is, that I know what that is, goes a long way to making us irreplaceable, right? Because I know this about you. I know when it happens, and I know what to do about it. Other people don't. I do. And this is what we want. I can't tell you, Rebecca, how many times I'm with couples who have been together for 20, 30 years, and I know more about them in the first 2 hours than they know about each other in terms of what is your partner's worst fears? What does your partner love the most? How do you get your partner home? If you used bait or a lure, what would you use? People actually don't know, and it's because I think they don't think they should have to know. But yet, again, in a secure functioning relationship, this is a survival thing. We're supposed to know this stuff. It's supposed to be our main career. And if people do that, they'll have a very, I think, satisfying relationship.
Yeah, it sounds like it will. There's a lot that we could continue to talk about. We had 2 books that we went through, Wired for Dating and Wired for Love. I recommend anybody to pick these up, whether you are looking to start a relationship or to make the one that you have better. Now, Stan, is there any way that people can get a hold of you if they want any more information?
Absolutely. People can go to my name, Stan Tatkin, Tatkin.com, and there you'll find, information about me, also some articles and videos and interviews like this one. People also, I'd like to direct them to my TED Talk, and you can find that by just Googling Tatkin, Tatkin, TED, and you'll be able to pull up the TED Talk. I'm very proud of that. And those people who are interested in learning how to work in the way that I'm describing, which is a psychobiological approach to couple therapy, are welcome to visit our training site, which is the PACT, P-A-C-T, Institute.com. We train therapists all over the world, in Canada as well, and also my wife and I do couple retreats all over the world. We have one coming up in Tuscany next year, and we're throughout the United States. You can go to either site and find where we are doing our couples retreats, and I really highly recommend them.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for joining me today, Stan. This was a great show.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So thanks, everybody, for listening, and just be sure to make today a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive. Please join Dr. Rebecca Risk again next Monday at noon Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel. We'll talk more next week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and